First of all, it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to UNFICYP's Global Open Day on Women, Peace and Security in Cyprus. We're encouraged that you continue to actively participate in and contribute to UNFICYP events, including those concerning the fundamental issue of gender. We value this partnership with you as we continue to strive to promote peace-building efforts on this island. As you may know, the tradition of Open Days dates back to 2010, in the lead up to the 10th anniversary of UN Security Council Resolution 1325. Open Days are intended to provide a platform for women to speak directly with senior UN leadership at the country level, to share experiences, concerns, and priorities, and to get to know each other better. The aim is for this dialogue to transform into concrete action, informing country-specific policies and programs related to the implementation of Security Council Resolution 1325. Colleagues, friends, it's taken years of hard work and advocacy, but the critical role of women in peace processes and in the peace and security agenda more broadly is now recognized widely. In October of last year, on the 15th anniversary of Resolution 1325, the Security Council adopted Resolution 2242, which once again underlined the substantial link between women's meaningful involvement in efforts to prevent, resolve, and rebuild from conflict, and those efforts' effectiveness and long-term sustainability. This agenda is extremely relevant to the Cyprus context today. In 2015, the Greek Cypriot leader, Mr. Nikos Anastasiadis, and the Turkish Cypriot leader, Mr. Mustafa Kemal, took the important step of establishing a bi-communal technical committee on gender equality, members of whom are in the audience today, to ensure that gender was taken into account in the framework of the talks. Here with us today is also a diverse group of civil society representatives who've done tremendous work towards raising the profile of gender equality issues as well as promoting peace in Cyprus. In fact, for decades, through organizations like Hands Across the Divide and many others, they've worked hand in hand to find space at the negotiating table, to build bridges, and to cultivate a culture of peace on the island. Yet, despite all of these efforts, considerations related to 1325, that is, to women, peace, and security, have largely remained at the margins. Much work still needs to be done to mainstream gender into the Cyprus peace process. This is not a mere detail, as I'm sure many of you would agree. It's about having a settlement deal that will impact and how it will impact the lives of both women and men. Today's event, as you know, is happening just weeks away from the critically important phase of the Cyprus peace process that will take place in Geneva. I'm hopeful that the UN's determination to achieve their shared goal of a comprehensive settlement will lead to a successful outcome. If the talks continue to progress positively, an important and unprecedented opportunity for a gender-sensitive outcome and to promote gender equality will be presented. The leaders will then have to turn to drafting constitutions that will need to be written as part of a settlement deal. New institutions will need to be created, and other elements will need to be brought together to implement a deal for United Cyprus. The voices and needs of women should be reflected in there, in those institutions, in those laws, in the constitutions. I'm certain that many of you in this room would have much to contribute in this regard. Ladies and gentlemen, today's open day in Cyprus is my first as head of UNFICYP, where we've also come a long way, I must admit, toward gender equality and empowerment. This is a long-standing mission, as you know, 52 years long, thus far. And I was recently reminded of a time back in the 1960s when the role of women in UNFICYP was somewhat different than today. The mission used to hold a Miss UNFICYP pageant, and our in-house magazine, The Blue Beret, featured a section called The Girls of UNFICYP. I personally would not have been terribly happy about being part of that column. This stands in stark contrast to our two most recent issues of the Blue Beret, one of which featured our recently departed colleague and Major General Kristen Lund, who was our force commander at UNFICYP, and as you probably know, the first female force commander of United Nations peace operations. Another issue featured myself, who succeeded Lisa Button as my successor, so another woman who headed the mission not long ago. The UN in Cyprus, I'm very pleased to say, also has a number of senior women throughout its ranks, particularly in the civilian area, but also we have increasing numbers of women among the police and the military. We also have our good offices colleague who support the talks and support the efforts of ESPN AIDE, and they're a very accomplished and distinguished set of professionals. We're hoping to get a gender advisor to join us at UNFICYP, a very important resource that we will hope to share with good offices and also to share with all of you in the extent to which we can be of help. And I think this would be a very important development for us, because the support of a gender advisor will help us to further mainstream gender in all of the work that we do. Because even though I was talking about how many women we have in the mission, of course it's not all about the numbers. Again, it's really about how our peace work will take into account both women's and men's needs and make sure that that's fully incorporated into any peace process going forward. I'd like to conclude by noting that last month I attended Pathways Towards Sustainable Peace Building. This was a conference organized by various groups, in fact various of you who are here today. Our panelists, all of whom played some role in that conference, have kindly agreed to present a few recommendations from what they're calling the White Book of Best Practice, which was produced as a key outcome of the conference. I'm particularly keen to hear what those recommendations are, and I'm sure that they'll be very helpful as we consider together the way forward. So I do look forward to continuing engaging with all of you in this very important work. And we hope that together we'll be able to help both boost women's participation in peace and security and also make sure that peace processes, not only here but around the world, fully respect and fully reflect women's needs and concerns. It's now my pleasure to invite our keynote speaker, Ms. Clare Hutchinson, to be about to present her remarks. Clare may have been someone that you've met previously. She was here, I believe, in 2012 also to address our open days. She is the gender advisor for DPKO, the UN's Department of Peacekeeping Operations, and she brings with her a wealth of experience, both from UN headquarters, where she currently has her office, but also from the field, from various peace operations, for example, in Kosovo and Lebanon. She is, as a second-time visitor to Cyprus, no stranger, therefore, to the Cypriot context, and I understand she's had some very good conversations with a number of you in her few days here, and I have no doubt that you will enjoy very much listening to her, and hopefully afterwards listening to our other panelists and then sharing some views. So without further ado, Clare, welcome here, welcome to Cyprus, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to thank the SRSG and for UNFICYP for inviting myself and my colleague Tara here to visit Cyprus, and especially to inviting us to be part of this open day. Open days are very special to me, and I will talk to those in a little bit. But I want to thank you in particular for being here, because the voices of women are very important to us as the UN, not just in terms of as a gender advisor, but in terms of the work we do overall. Women's civil society is critical to every aspect of peace and security, from the initial framing of language to the final agreements. The voices of women must be central and must be present. The United Nations, we've had a very long relationship with women's civil society, and like any relationship, it's not always easy, but it's something that we work very hard to foster and to move forward. It is important for us, and it is important for us to learn from changing contexts as well, how we can move forward. It was indeed the critical voices of women civil society that actually started us on this path to having gender advisors in our missions. In 1999, prior to the adoption of Resolution 1325, we actually didn't have any gender integration or gender representation in any peacekeeping mission. And it was actually the voices of women, the very strong, very critical, and rightly so critical voices of women, who actually turned to us and said, where are the women? And that is a very important question to ask. But from those 4 simple words grew a network of gender advisors and focal points across all of our missions. Today we have 64 gender experts in every peacekeeping mission, which is 16 missions, and they provide guidance on the integration of women, peace and security into all aspects of peacekeeping, so not just in gender, but across the security sector as a whole. It's likewise the same collective voices of women in solidarity and sisterhood that pushed the adoption of Resolution 1325 in October 2000, as you all know. The resolution provides a framework for peace operations to ensure that gender perspectives are included from the outset of planning processes to the implementation of peace agreements. It speaks to the reconstitution of community, to the re-establishment of social cohesion, and the rebuilding of community trust. It is in this spirit of collective agreement that is the heart of 1325, and it is in this spirit of collectivism to which the Global Open Days was established. They were initiated by peacekeeping operations in conjunction with our sister Department of Political Affairs, the United Nations Development Programme and Young Women. And collectively we came, and I was actually there at the time, so I'm very proud to actually be one of the founders of the Open Days. And it was to recognise that Resolution 1325, while it was a landmark resolution, it had a very staggered and slow progression. So we wanted to recognise, but not necessarily celebrate that. So in 2004, and the Open Days came from the idea of the genesis of women's civil society having a voice. And it actually came from a mission that I was in 2004, where there was a peace agreement ongoing and women's voices were not present. It was heavily criticized by women's civil society. It was heavily criticized because all women's voices must be reflected. They must be reflected across society, because if a solution is to be sustainable, it has to reflect all parts of that society. Sustainability is actually grounded in inclusivity. So the women posed the question again, where are the women? They posed that question to the peace process leaders, who are by default men, but we recognized that women's inclusions, and we still recognize that women's inclusion and women's voices are critical to every process. So thinking outside of this big institutional box, this box there where men's voices were heavily heard, we created this platform for women's voices to be situated firmly where we could hear. We invited women's civil society to present their perspectives and to directly engage with UN leadership. They detailed their reflections on the issues and provided specific and practical recommendations on how we forge peace as a whole society. And thus, the Open Days were born. So in 2010, on the 10th anniversary, the collective entities used this as a model to reinforce our commitment to women's civil society as partners and by pushing the voice of women forward. Today, these Open Days are held every year in every peacekeeping mission and peace operations mission. And every year, women from across boundaries of ethnicity, religion, community, and generations come together collectively to ask the question, where are the women? But let me highlight some of the examples of what Open Days can do and what they have done. So in Darfur, in one of our missions, the women in Sudan came across the different areas of the country and ethnicities, and they met as part of an Open Day process. And every year, They wanted to discuss the ongoing and persistent challenges of getting 1325 and their voices firmly heard. And the result of that day, they decided, was a establishment of a 1325 legislative caucus. And the idea of this caucus was for women who would have oversight on the laws that they found to be discriminatory. And in finding entry points in those laws, they would turn them to Parliament by saying, they don't foster our quality, they don't meet our standards. Likewise, in South Lebanon, I was a gender advisor in UNIFIL, and the open days were a platform that we used as a safe space for women to gather across religious lines, from Christian to Shia, and where they would talk about the challenges to their mutual equality. The result of this platform was the empowerment of the first candidate to run for mayor in a heavily patriarchal environment. The collective support of her sisters across lines gave her the courage to stand for election, to be the voice of equality. But let me be clear that the issues women raise are not issues of relevance only to women. The issues of peace and security are issues of humanity. The open days are a platform for women, but they're a platform for civil society to address issues central of importance to inclusive human security and sustainable peace. I'm thrilled to be able to be part of this open day. As I said, it's a personal interest of mine. But to listen to the voices of women from civil society who are so important, who are so critical to us, who are our partners in peace. In Cyprus, I've had some pleasure to meet some new friends, and I hope to meet some more of you. And your collective engine with vision is fundamental to how your society will advance and how the principles of women, peace and security will be and should be implemented. The collective voice of women's civil society is the collective voice of all society. The power of women is at the heart and soul of the community, and that should translate into the heart and soul of every political, social, economic, and security structure. Instead of asking, where are the women? We have to say, here are the women. Here are the women, and let our voices be heard. I thank you for being here. I thank you for letting me be here. I thank you for your attention. I thank you for your efforts. I thank you for your energy. I thank you for holding us accountable. I thank you for your partnership. I thank you for being women, and you are here. I look forward very much to your recommendations. I look forward to hearing from the panelists. And I do wish you a very happy and successful open day. Thank you.